Lucas Cade had sat silent through every appeal, every sermon, every final chance to say something worth forgiving. But today, 37 minutes before the needle, he asked for the K9 who'd taken him down. No one expected emotion. No one expected redemption. But when the cameras caught what happened next, the way the old dog laid his head on the inmate's lap, the way Lucas whispered something into her ear, it changed everything. The silence in that death row cell shattered more than one life. The fluorescent lights above cell block debuzzed faintly, like dying insects. Concrete sweat clung to the walls, and everything smelled faintly of bleached steel and old regrets. Officer Mitch Daly hated this part of the job. Not the silence, not even the death. It was the waiting that wore on you, the kind of waiting that let ghosts in. He stood outside the observation window, arms folded over his tan uniform, eyes fixed on the man inside. Inmate number 4128. Lucas Cade. Double homicide. Convicted, sentenced, and now, counting down, still hasn't moved, came a voice from beside him. Daly turned. Warden Havers. Face like a dried-up riverbed. Clipboard in one hand, radio in the other. The warden didn't blink often, like blinking might show weakness. He just sits there, no last words, no last meal, didn't even look at the priest. Havers clicked his tongue. Until this morning. Daly already knew what he meant. Cade had made one request. Not a cigarette. Not a call to a long-lost sibling. A dog. K9 valor. "I don't like it," Havers muttered, eyes scanning the corridor like it might bite him. "It's a circus waiting to happen." "It's 30 minutes," Daly said. "He just wants to see her." "And you believe that?" Daly didn't answer. He looked back into the glass. Cade sat on the steel bench, hands folded in his lap. Calm, empty-eyed. The same man who, 5 years ago, had fled into the foothills after torching a double Y with his girlfriend and her sister inside it. It was Valor who'd found him, bleeding from a broken leg, hiding in a dry creek bed like a wounded animal. She hadn't growled. She'd just sat beside him, waiting. "She's already here?" Daly asked. "Downstairs," Havers said. "In the van." "I'll bring her in." Havers scoffed. "You're a soft one, Mitch." "Always were." Daly didn't answer. He just turned and walked. The facility's back lot shimmered with heat. Gravel crunched under Daly's boots as he opened the side door of the unmarked transport van. Inside, lie with her paws tucked under her chest, was Valor. Her muzzle had grayed in the years since the arrest. Her hind legs stiff with arthritis, but her eyes, those deep amber eyes, still scanned the world like every movement mattered. "Hey, girl," Daly whispered. Her ears perked, and she tried to rise, tail thumping once against the metal. Daly helped her out gently, one arm under her belly, the other cradling her hindquarters. She was lighter than she used to be, bones too close to the surface. "She's not going to like the smell in there," a nearby officer said as he passed. "She smelled worse," Daly muttered. They made their way back inside. The hallway to the death chamber was quiet, aside from the occasional squawk of a distant intercom. Everyone had retreated to corners, some watching from monitors, some pretending they didn't care. Daly paused at the door. 2 guards opened it. Lucas Cade sat up straighter when he saw her. Cade's wrists were chained to his lap, ankles bolted to the bench. But something about his face changed. Not softened, just shifted, a crack in the stone. Daly unhooked Valor's lead. She didn't bark, didn't rush. She simply walked forward, slowly, purposefully, and stopped in front of the inmate, nose twitching. Cade lowered his head. "Hey, girl," he murmured. Valor tilted her head. Then, like it had been rehearsed 1,000 times, she stepped between his legs and laid her head in his lap. Daly exhaled. Something in his chest caught on the edge of that image. The cameras caught it, too. Silent, watching eyes in every corner. Cade stroked behind her ears with chained hands. "You remember me?" She blinked, nuzzled closer. No one spoke. Even Havers, watching from behind the one-way glass, didn't make a sound. And then Cade whispered something. Just 2 words. She knew. Daly's ears pricked. He glanced toward the observation window, expecting movement, reaction, but no one flinched. "What did you say?" he asked. Cade didn't answer. He just kept stroking the dog's fur. Daly stepped closer. "She who?" Still silence. Valor licked the inside of Cade's wrist. Then Cade turned his eyes to Daly. There was something new in them. Not defiance. Not remorse. Something older. Like grief that had never figured out where to go. "She wasn't supposed to be there," Cade said softly. "Riley was. Not Lena." Daly froze. Lena, the younger sister. The one whose body was never positively identified. The fire had burned too hot. Dental records were inconclusive. "She switched shifts," Cade went on. "The night before, she took Riley's car. That's why the report was wrong. I thought—" He didn't finish the sentence. Daly felt cold creep into the back of his neck. "You're saying—" Cade met his eyes. "I killed the wrong sister." The observation room exploded with motion. Havers slammed a fist on the desk. Officers leaned into headsets. The governor's liaison barked something about stalling protocol. But it was all too late. Lucas Cade had confessed. Not innocence. Not accident. Something Messier. Regret. Back in the cell, Valor shifted her weight. Cade bent low, forehead against hers, his voice barely above breath. "She waited, didn't she?" Daly's throat tightened. He nodded. "She never left that creek. Sat there until we pulled you out." Cade smiled barely. "I thought so." They sat in silence another minute. Then Cade looked up at Daly again. "There's something buried out there. I left it under the white oak. Half-mile from the ridge trail. You'll know when you see it." Daly's heart thudded. "What is it?" Cade just smiled again. She knew. Your dog. She always knew. When Valor was led from the room, she resisted, pulled toward the bench, whined. It was the only time she made a sound. Daly knelt and took her by the collar. "We gotta go, girl." "He's finished." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. And neither, it seemed, did she. 31 minutes later, the injection was delivered. Lucas Cade died with no last words, just a whisper of her against his sleeve. Outside, the sky was pale with morning. Birds moved somewhere distant in the tree line. Daly stood by the fence, Valor leaning against his leg. His fingers twitched. Under the white oak, Cade had said, half a mile from the ridge, a place he hadn't thought about in years. Tomorrow, he'd take the dog out there. But tonight, he stood in the quiet and wondered how long a soul could wait before the truth pulled it back up. The foothills rose in slow, lonesome waves beyond the prison's back fence, a place where the trees forgot they were near a death house. "Officer," Mitch Daly drove with the windows down. Valor sat in the passenger seat, her chin resting on the cracked leather armrest, ears pricked forward like she already knew where they were going. He hadn't brought her to this part of the woods in years, not since the Cade arrest. Back then, she was younger, stronger, had pulled through bramble and creek like a creature born to it. Now she moved slower, but the glint in her eyes hadn't dulled, not for a second. "Under the white oak," Mitch muttered, steering left onto a gravel service road. "You remember it?" Valor licked her nose. They'd tracked Lucas Cade through these woods in October 2020. He was running on a shattered tibia, bleeding from a head gash, desperate and slipping into shock. They found him curled in a ditch, whispering to himself like a man, trying to pray and curse in the same breath. Valor had just sat beside him, watching, breathing with him. Never growled. Just waited. The ridge trail was overgrown now. Fern spilled across it. Branches swayed with secrets. Mitch parked at the old clearing. "You ready?" he asked. Valor whined low, the kind of sound that used to mean she'd picked up something. They moved slowly through the underbrush. The white oak stood about a half-mile in, crooked and scarred from some old lightning strike. Mitch saw it before she did, but only barely. Its bark was pale in the morning light, as if the tree itself had kept its mouth shut all these years. Then Valor stopped, nose down, tail stiff. She scratched once at the base of the tree. Then again. Mitch felt the weight of it before he even bent down. He pulled the small spade from his backpack and started digging. For inches in, the metal edge struck something solid. Not wood, not stone. He cleared around it, gentle now, and lifted it free. A metal tin, rusted around the lip, about the size of a lunchbox. Military issue. He opened it. Inside, a worn photograph, folded twice, of two girls, one with auburn curls, one with jet black hair, both smiling. Summer light behind them. Under it, a child stuffed bear, half rotted with age and weather. One button eye gone. A tag sewn into the ear. Lena. And beneath that, wrapped in thick plastic, a small black flash drive. Mitch's breath caught. What the hell did you bury out here, Cade? Back at the station, the lab guys didn't ask questions when Mitch handed over the drive. He was still wearing his badge. Still had clearance. An hour later, he sat in an evidence room staring at the screen as video files loaded. There were 5, all time-stamped 2 weeks before the fire, all filmed in the kitchen of that same trailer, where Lena and Riley had lived with Cade. Each video was about the same length. Silent, uncomfortable. Each showed Cade sitting at the kitchen table, talking, or rather, being talked to. A woman's voice off camera. Angry, taunting. "You're weak," she spat. "You think you love her? You don't even know what love is." Then another clip. Same woman, different day. "If she leaves you, Lucas, it won't be with her body intact. You understand me?" The voice wasn't Riley's. Wasn't Lena's either. Mitch felt something twist in his gut. He skipped to the last file. Cade looked haggard. Stubble on his cheeks. A bruise blooming under one eye. "I'm keeping this," he said to the camera, "just in case. Because if I end up dead or someone else does, it's not going to be just on me. She's not who you think." He paused. "I don't even know her real name." Who the hell was she? Mitch asked aloud. He dug back into the evidence files. Cade's arrest report, Riley's dental records, Lena's employment history. But nothing jumped out. Then he saw it, barely a footnote. A complaint filed 6 months before the fire. Domestic disturbance. Caller anonymous. No charges. But there was a name listed as a frequent visitor to the trailer, Mara Kells. Mitch stared at the name. It meant nothing. So he did what cops do when their instincts won't shut up. He started digging. Mara Kells didn't exist in the DMV database. No social. No medical. But she did pop in a 2018 mugshot from Wyoming under the name Marianne Keller. Same face. Slightly younger. Charge: assault with a deadly weapon. Dismissed. She had moved 3 times since. Every address registered under different aliases. Now she lived in a rundown farmhouse outside Black Ridge, about 45 miles east. No job listed. No landline. Just one power bill paid monthly, and a red truck seen parked in the same spot on satellite images for the last year. Mitch didn't call it in. He just packed Valor into the truck and left. The farmhouse squatted at the edge of a dried-out field, surrounded by rusted fence wire and cattails gone yellow with July heat. The screen door creaked in the wind. A wind chime made from old spoons clinked unevenly. Mitch left the engine running. "You wait," he told Valor. But she whined. He hesitated, then opened her door. "Fine, but stay close." They crossed the lot together. The porch boards groaned under his boots. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Then a faint noise inside, like glass being set down. Mitch's hand hovered near his hip. Not on the gun, just close. He opened the screen door. The inside smelled of old oil and cat litter. A single fan spun uselessly in the corner. There were books everywhere, stacked in piles, none shelved. And photographs, dozens of them, all of the same 2 girls. One of them was Riley. The other, Mitch froze. The other was not Lena. It was Mara Kells. A voice behind him. "You shouldn't be in here." He turned slowly. The woman standing in the hallway had a shotgun leveled at his chest. Stringy brown hair, hollow cheeks, but those eyes were sharp, cold, like cut stone. "Marianne Keller?" Mitch said carefully. Her mouth twitched. "You got the wrong woman." Valor stood stock still beside him, her head lowered, ears back. "She remembers you," Mitch said softly. "I never met that dog in my life. She was there, at the trailer. You were close to Cade. You need to leave. You threatened them, didn't you?" Keller's jaw twitched. "You hated Riley. You thought Cade would pick you. But he didn't. He used me. You made him think it was love. Then you made him watch it burn." Her hands trembled now, just slightly. "He confessed," Mitch said, "but he buried the truth. I found it." For the first time, something human flickered across her face. Not guilt, not quite fear. Regret, maybe, or panic. She lowered the gun just a hair, and Valor surged forward. The dog didn't bite, just rammed into her legs, sending her stumbling backward. The gun clattered. Mitch was on her before she could reach for it. She screamed once, then went still. Later, when they cuffed her and let her out, she didn't look at Mitch, but she did look at the dog. And Valor stared back like she was remembering something she'd smelled in fire and blood years ago. In the holding room, Keller gave it up in pieces. No lawyer, no games. "I thought he'd leave her for me," she whispered. "But he kept going back. So I made a choice. You told him Lena was out of town. Mitch guessed. He thought she was. But she switched shifts with Riley that night. So he lit the place thinking that it would kill the woman who betrayed him," she finished. "And I let him believe it." Mitch left the precinct that night with the confession in his pocket and a storm moving over the hills behind him. He stopped once at a gas station, bought a bottle of water, one for Valor, two. She drank slowly, eyes never leaving his face. "You were right," he murmured. "Back then, you knew what none of us did." Her tail brushed once against the seat. They drove the long way home. The truth was out now, but the weight of it wasn't any lighter. Some ghosts don't leave just because their names are spoken, and one chapter still waited to close. The town didn't talk much about Lucas Cade after the arrest, and even less after the truth came out. There was no press conference, no retrial, no vigil. The case had already been closed twice. Mitch Daly knew better than to expect justice to come neatly packaged. But Valor had waited long enough. A week had passed since Mary Ann Keller's confession. Enough time for the DA to officially seal the statement. Enough time for the prison to change Cade's file from premeditated to compromised. Too late for anyone who needed the change most. On a quiet Thursday, under the bruised gray sky, Mitch drove back out toward the creek bed, the place where it had started, where the dog had waited. He parked in the same gravel spot near the ridge trail. Valor stepped out slow now, her back legs quivering slightly with age. But she still moved like she had a job to do. He followed her without saying anything. They passed the white oak again, then turned down into the dry ravine. It was here that she stopped. Same place as 5 years ago. The same rock half buried in red earth. The same twisted bramble above it. This was where she'd found Cade, where she'd sat beside him until Mitch caught up, where she'd pressed her warm body into his as he bled, shivering, waiting. She walked over to the same spot and lay down, just lay there, like nothing had changed. Mitch sat beside her and exhaled. It wasn't supposed to be him, he said. Wasn't supposed to end that way. Valor didn't move. Her head rested on her paws, eyes blinking slow. He took the fall, Mitch continued. She manipulated him, broke him, fed him lies, and he still protected her, even at the end. He swallowed. The creek bed was silent, except for wind through the trees. I think he wanted you here. For this. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside, Cade's final letter. Found tucked behind the wall vent in his cell. Discovered by a janitor 3 days after the execution. Addressed not to family, not to the court, to whomever finds the truth. He unfolded it slowly. The paper creased and soft with sweat and ink. He read, I made a deal with hell and called it love. I believed her because I needed to believe someone. I thought if I could give my guilt a name, I could live with it. I was wrong. And by the time I knew it, it was too late. But your dog, she knew. She waited, even when I didn't deserve it. Mitch stopped reading. Valor's breathing was shallow now, a soft, rhythmic pulse in the quiet. If there's any forgiveness left in this world, maybe it lives in something that doesn't speak, that only waits. I hope she forgives me. I hope one day someone else does too. Mitch folded the letter and tucked it beneath a flat stone near the base of the rock wall. He didn't say anything for a while. Just sat, just listened. A hawk circled high above, its cry cutting across the sky like a tear in fabric. Later that afternoon, Valor stopped eating. Mitch took her to the small town vet off Highway 19, the same place where they'd stitch her up after her first takedown, where she'd once limped in dragging barbed wire after searching a collapsed barn for 3 days straight. The vet didn't say much. Didn't need to. She's tired, the doctor whispered, resting a hand on Valor's shoulder. She's done her job. Mitch nodded once, but his jaw locked. I'll stay, he said. The clinic room was warm, quiet. He sat on the floor, her head in his lap, just like she'd done for Cade. He whispered to her. Not the words he'd said during training drills or on patrol or during search ops. Something softer. Rest now, girl. She didn't flinch at the needle. She just breathed in once. Then let go. That night, Mitch stood on his back porch with Valor's leash coiled in one hand. The moon was thin, the sky cloudless. He hadn't cried at the funeral. Not when they gave her the folded flag, or when the chief read her commendations. Not even when they played the radio clip from the day she saved a missing toddler trapped in an irrigation pipe. But he cried now because there were no cameras, no uniforms, just him and the leash. The next morning, he drove back to the creek one last time. He carried her ashes in a cedar box, set them down beneath the white oak, right where she'd scratched. There, he buried her beside the tin Cade had left. 2 secrets under the same tree. One covered in lies, the other in loyalty. A year passed. The town moved on. Headlines faded. Mary Ann Keller pled guilty to multiple charges, but most of the public had stopped paying attention. No one cared about the aftermath of forgotten fires. Except Mitch. He left the force 2 months later. Bought a small place outside Rook County, near the woods. Sometimes he walked the ridge trail alone. Sometimes not. It was early spring when the letter arrived. No return address. Just a wax-sealed envelope with a single typed line on the front. She waited for both of us. Inside was a photo. Grainy. Old. 2 girls, Riley and Lena, standing in front of the trailer. But this one had something different. In the background, a 3rd woman, barely in frame, face turned, but it was her, Mary Ann Keller, smiling like she belonged, and on the back of the photo, scribbled in pen, "Not all ghosts stay buried." Mitch folded it, tucked it into the same lockbox that held Valor's badge tag, and that night, he dreamed of the woods again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. He was standing beside a white oak, and someone was waiting.